Good morning to everyone, and at least it's a sunny morning here in Parma. So good morning for everyone is connected from this time zone. But I know that there are a worldwide attendance of this webinar. So welcome to this webinar that will be on high-risk plans. Let me briefly introduce the speaker of this webinar and myself as well. I'm Ciro Gardi, I'm a scientific officer here in EFSA, and I am the coordinator of this high-risk plant activity in EFSA. Together, and I will tell you something I will give the introduction and something on the list of pests. Then here with me, there is Maria Belén Marquez Garcia from the European Commission, DG Sante. Welcome, Maria. And Maria will tell us shortly something, introduce the concept of high-risk plants. Then Stefano Preti, working with us in EFSA, will describe the section on commodities. And finally, Roel Potting, that is the chair of the EFSA working group on high-risk plants, will introduce the aspect related to the phytosanitary mitigation measures. Some brief technical information. As you realized already, the webinar is in English. The webinar is recorded, so you can then get this recording in a few days. Will be available on the EFSA YouTube channel. And in the image that you see in this slide, you can see the appearance of the application that you are using at this moment, for attending the webinar. So in the main frame, you see the slide of the presentation. Then in the bottom left, you have a small frame where you should see ourselves. And then on the right, you have a text box where you can write, also starting from now, you can write a question and related to the topic of this webinar, so the dossier preparation for high-risk plant. The text box that is at the bottom instead is reserved only for technical questions. So if you have problems related to the connection, the audio, the video, you can type your question in this box that is at the bottom. Some brief outline on the structure of this webinar. So very shortly I will describe the objective of this webinar. Then Maria Belén will introduce high-risk plants. And then the main part of the webinar will be devoted to, we will guide you on the preparation of the dossier. At the end of this webinar that will last approximately 30 minutes, more or less, we will have a question and answer session that will last 15-20 minutes. And then we have the closure of the webinar. So coming to the objective of this webinar, you know already, I imagine that you have already with you probably, and you have read the technical report that specify what information should be included in the dossier for requesting the lift of ban of the high-risk plant, ban that will enter in force next year, but Belén will specify this better. The objective of this webinar is really to help you, to guide you on all this the section that should compose the dossier. So it will be very practically aimed. So now I will give the floor to Maria Belén for the section on high-risk plan. Thank you, Belén.
Thank you, Ciro, for the introduction. So I will introduce very briefly high-risk plans before moving about how to prepare the dossier. So the regulation 2016-2031 was published in 2016 and will be applicable from the 14th of December 2019. And this new regulation introduced changes in the import regime into the European Union. The new plant health regulation, while maintaining the open system with certain restrictions and permanent prohibitions of Directive 2029, introduced also a provisional prohibition pending a risk assessment, with the creation of the list of the high-risk plants. The list of high-risk plants was published in December last year in Commission Implementing Regulation 2018-2019, And all the plants listed in this list will be prohibited from the 14th of December 2019, pending a risk assessment. The risk assessment will be carried out by the European Food Safety Authority with the information provided by the third countries willing to export that commodities into the European Union. All the information about the procedures to submit the dossier, it's contained in Commission Implementing Regulation 2018-2018, published in December last year. Once the risk assessment will be completed, the European Commission will proceed with the decision and the modification of the list of high-risk plants and the establishment of specific measures based on the risk assessment or in a permanent prohibition. I would like now very briefly to explain which are the different groups that the high-risk plants are divided in. And the first group is plants for planting, containing 34 genera and 1 species for which a general ban from all third countries will apply pending a risk assessment. The second category is plants, and it contains 1 species, Ullucus tuberosus, and a general ban from third countries, both for plants for planting and the tuber, will be applicable. The third category, fruits, it contains one genus, Momordica, based on an identified pest of concern, Tris palmi. And the last group is good of ulmus, that also the ban is based on an identified pest of concern, Saperda tridentata. So, some more information about these different groups for the category 1, plants for planting, that contains the 34 genera and 1 species. It excludes seeds, in vitro material, and naturally or artificially dwarfed plants for planting, meaning that for this exclusion, the current import requirements will continue applying. The second category, plants, it contains, as I said before, the species Ullucus tuberosus, and the introduction of Ullucus tuberosus will be prohibited from the 14th of December 2019, pending a complete risk assessment. The third category is fruits of Momordica originating in countries where Tris palmi is known to occur. However, if Momordica is originating in countries where Tris palmi is not present, or in a country where having Tris palmi they have effective mitigation measures in place, Momordica is not considered a high-risk plant, but for the trade to continue after the 14th of December 2019, the pest status or the effective mitigation measures have to be submitted to the Commission in writing by the National Plant Protection Organization of the third country. In a similar way, the good of ulmus originating in countries where Saperda tridentata is known to occur is a high-risk plant, but if the good originated in a country where this pest is not present, it's not a high-risk plant, but the pest status needs to be communicated in advance to the Commission. Now I will give back the floor to Ciro to explain how the dossier needs to be composed.
Thank you very much for this clear and exhaustive presentation I explained. Thank you, Belém. So now I will recap part of what Belém already said. So I will describe briefly the process that starts with the preparation and submission of a dossier by the third country. I would specify that as a third country, we intend all the countries that are not belonging to the European Union. So the third country that intended to export one plant product that is listed as high-risk plant should prepare the dossier according to the specification that are in the technical report and that will be described here in this webinar. The dossier should be sent to the European Commission in the way that we will specify later. European Commission will perform an initial completeness check based on some aspect, and if the dossier is complete according to this first check, will transmit the dossier to EFSA. EFSA will perform another more in-depth completeness check, and if also EFSA detect that information are lacking, as well as the Commission, European Commission, we can contact the applicants for request the integration of the information. In case the dossier is complete, EFSA proceed together with the working group, the ad hoc working group, to perform the commodity risk assessment. The commodity risk assessment will be published, And the commodity risk assessment will be then transmitted also to the European Commission, that as a risk manager will take the final decision if maintain the ban of import or to derogate, to remove the ban of import. As you probably know, having read the technical report already, the dossier is composed by three main sections. The first section is related to the description of the commodity. The second section is related to the identification of pests that are associated with the commodity and present in the country. And the third section is on the description of phytosanitary mitigation measures. One important component of the dossier that will be probably, we request that is the cover, the initial pages of the dossier, is the checklist. The checklist is a tool that is intended to be useful for Commission and EFSA in order to check the completeness, but also useful as a guide for you applicants, so helping you to control, to check if you have prepared and provided all the information that are requested. This, of course, will save time in a later stage, because if the dossier is prepared correctly since the beginning, this will imply and save time for the later stages. Now we move for the presentation of the commodity section, and for this I will give the floor to my colleague Stefano Preti. Thank you, Stefano. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ciro. And as explained from Ciro and Belen, I will present the part of the commodity specification as the first part of the dossier. As already explained, the commodity could refer to three different plant material, such as plant for planting, wood material, or fruits. And anyway, you should describe the commodity in a precise way and a detailed way, as requested from the technical report, and following the specification of the various and relevant international ISPM, the relevant SPM. First of all, you have to describe the commodity, as explained from this printout, with the specification, giving the scientific name and the common name, if present, and specifying if there are any synonyms. Then you have to provide a taxonomic classification of the commodity and the plant type, and then the specification depending on the commodity types. For example, if you are talking about plant for planting, you should give an idea, and you should give information about the plant age, the media that you are using for growing, if you're growing your plant for plant from certified seeds or certified nurseries. Then you have to provide information about the period and the phenology in which you're going to ship the commodity, the general sanitary status, the agronomic management, and the area and the climate that you have in the production areas in your third country. About that, you have to provide a map of the third country, and in particular to locate and to highlight in this map the production area, and within those production areas, the production area in which you are producing the commodities that you are willing to export in Europe, and provide a climate classification, for example using the Köppen-Geiger map, till the subgroup level of the climate classification. In conclusion of this first part, you have to provide a picture, that is called a picture, about the commodity in the different stages and of the production, and the commodity itself as the one that you're gonna export to Europe. Then I will give the floor to Ciro, that will explain you the identification of all pests potentially associated with the commodity in the exporting country.
Thank you, Stefano. Thank you for the presentation, and I think it is important that you outlined the importance of also describing the condition of cultivation and the techniques that are followed by the producer to produce the commodity, because this is really relevant also for us, for having a more insight on how the commodity is cultivated, and so is extremely important. So now we move to the section on the identification of pests, as Stefano said. And this, I would say, that is probably the heart of our or your dossier, and this is probably the most critical part. Probably you have already read that at the beginning, the starting point is for you to provide a comprehensive list of all the pests that can affect the commodity species. So not only the commodity at the beginning, but the commodity species or genus in your country. And then you have, of course, to explain how this list has been compiled. In the technical report, we indicate that you have to perform a systematic search. So you have to systematically review all the information that could be available. This means including scientific literature, but not only. So scientific literature can be one source, but you can refer also, and here you have indication of some of the databases that you can use, but of course you can use also other sources of information like gray literature or technical report or other information that are probably held by you and PPO, National Plant Protection Organization. So you can use a variety of sources of information. The important thing is that you provide evidences of the sources of information that you list. A key point for us is what we define actionable pests. Actionable pests are the pests relevant for us, are pests that have regulatory significance that can be associated with the considered commodity. For these pests that are relevant for us, phytosanitary mitigation measure may be specified to ensure the pest freedom status, especially the pest freedom status of the consignment of the product that you intended to export. These pests of regulatory significance can include, for instance, the quarantine pests that are listed in the Directive 29 of the European Commission, Directive 29 of 2000, and in Annexes 1 or 2, or in the emergency measure are indicated. Or can be also pests that are pending, pests for which is the quarantine status has not yet defined. So is pending the pest categorization that in turn will allow us to decide if the pest is, will be quarantine pest or not. Based on this initial list of pests that are affecting the species or genus in your country of the commodity, you have to divide this pest in two lists. The first one concern the pests that are already regulated in the European Union. And you can check which pests are already regulated in the Annexes 1 and 2 and in the emergency measures of the Council Directive that I previously mentioned. Here you can see that there is an hyperlink in this slide, and because you can rely on this presentation also later on, you can always access this other documentation. In this slide you can see how we are going to classify these EU regulated pests that are present in your country and are associated to the commodity. And you can see that here, based on the combination on this condition, the pest can be classified at the end as a pest, actionable pest or not. Meaning that, okay, where there is the cross means yes, and the absence of the cross means no. So you see that pest 1 has not pest-free areas and can be associated to the commodity. So this is a pest that is relevant for us. So is an actionable pest. The pest 2, for instance, is associated to the commodity, can be associated to the commodity, but we have the condition of having a pest-free areas in the exporting country. So in this case, if the consignment is produced in pest-free areas, it's not anymore relevant for us. And so you see that using this different combination of status of condition, you can conclude which one, you and us, we can conclude which one of these pests are actionable. The same exercise, the same selection you have to do for the other pests. So the other pests that are not regulated in EU, in the European Union. And in this case, the condition to be verified are if these pests that are in your country are associated to the commodity, you have to indicate if they are present or absent in the EU. The question you can raise is that where you can get this information. You know that there are several sources of information. For instance, we indicate in the technical report that the EPO database, the CABI database, are indicating the distribution of the pest, so you can detect which one is already present in the EU and which one is not. Further, you have to indicate if the pest is really associated to the commodity and not only with the species or the genus, and if there are evidences of impact. So, which one are the relevant pests in this second list? You see, pest 1 has all the three criteria. So, is absent in the EU, is associated to the commodity, and there are evidence of the impact. So, this is relevant for us. While the pest number 2 is associated with the commodity, there are evidence of the impact, but is already present in the EU. So this means is not absent in the EU, so is a double negation, so is present in the EU. If it's present in the EU, it's not relevant for us because we have already in the problem at home, I would say. And so also combining this other information, according to what is stated in the technical report, you can draft the conclusion. Extracting the relevant pests from the first table and the second table, in this third table are summarized all the pest species present in your country associated with the commodity that may represent a potential risk for the European Union. So these are the pests that are relevant for us. For this pest listed in this third table, of course, we request from your side to have more detailed information. So we ask you to provide a detailed taxonomic classification, providing scientific names and classification to also higher taxonomical level. We ask you to provide the geographical distribution and if there are areas free of the pest. And especially what is extremely important for us is to have information on the biology of the pest. Of course, you can get this information from the scientific literature or from different sources. It's important to know if these pests have other host other than the commodity that is under description, and which part of the plant are affected by the pest, and which type of damage the pest can cause. And also we appreciate also if you can indicate if you are aware of the existence of pest risk assessment on these pests. And also indicate the references that you have used for providing these informations. And now is the section on phytosanitary mitigation measure, for which I will invite Roel Potting, and I thank you, Stefano, for contribution. So welcome, Roel, and thank you for your contribution that will be extremely important also for this third part of the dossier.
Okay, thank you, Ciro. Good morning, everybody in the world. And I will tell you now something about the next section in the evaluation of the dossier. And that is the evaluation of the phytosanitary mitigation measures that are taken on the commodity in your country of export. Oops, sorry, that's the other one. So, in the next step, EFSA will evaluate the phytosanitary measures that are taken on all the pests that were selected in the previous section that Ciro just explained. So, for each identified actionable pest, EFSA will assess the overall efficacy of the phytosanitary mitigation measures that are applied. And then EFSA will assess if pest freedom is achieved of all the measures that are taken in your country of export. And we will do that for each of the pests that were identified in the previous steps. So, the applicant has to provide technical data on all the measures that are taken on the commodity in the country of export. So we expect to get information on all the plant protection products that are used in protecting your commodity and any other measures that you take in your country of export. Then you have to describe any certification system you have in place in your country and all the inspections you do in the nurseries and any sampling and testing procedures you have in place. Then we expect also that you explain how the surveillance system in your country works. So how do you survey for the presence of pests in the surrounding environment of the nurseries, of the production areas. And you should explain in the dossier how the commodity is handled, how it is packed, and how the export procedure is before it is exported to the EU. So for each of the plant protection products you use in the production of the commodity, we would like information you have on the officially approved label in your country. So with this, you show what is the active ingredient of the plant protection product, what is the application type, when is it applied, how many times it is applied, and what is the dosage used for the treatment. And with this information, EFSA will then estimate the efficacy of the plant protection product used against the specified pest. And you have to provide this information according to Appendix E in the technical report. Then for any other measures that you apply in your country to protect your commodity against harmful organisms, you have to describe all the other measures in the same way. And if there are any protocol standards, you have to include that in the dossier. And then again, with this information, EFSA will estimate and check the evidence of the efficacy of the specified control measure against the specified pest. Then, as I already said, you also have to provide information on the surveillance system in place in your country. So we would like to know what is the frequency and timing of the surveys you conduct in the surrounding environment of the nurseries or the production places. And if you indicate that there is a pest-free area for a particular pest, then we also expect that you explain that in detail where exactly the pest-free area is in relation to the production sites, and that you explain what is the surveillance system in place for the pest-free area, so that you maintain the area pest-free. Then we expect that the applicant will give an overview of all the control measures that are applied on the commodity. And we propose to do that in a kind of calendar where you show which control measure is applied at what time in the year. So in this example here, there are 2 insecticides applied. So one in May and July, and the second one in June. There are 2 fungicides applied. There is an inspection regime in place. So there are inspections taking place, in this case in March, in May, and in July, and one maybe just before export in November. Then there is a root treatment just before export, and the plants are reported when they enter the nursery. Okay, so then we have a list of all the phytosanitary measures that are taken during the production of the commodity. And then the applicant has to provide then which measure is effective against a particular actionable pest which was selected in the previous stage. So in this example, so on the top row, all the measures are listed that are applied in the production of the commodity in your country. And in the columns, then all the actionable pests are listed. And then for each pest, it is indicated if the measure applies to that particular pest. So for this pest, number 1, the risk reduction options number 1, 2, and 3 are effective against this pest. And then EFSA will assess if this combination of measures is effective to guarantee pest freedom of this pest on the commodity. And in this example, so EFSA evaluated that likelihood as almost certain. So, and we will do that then for all the actionable pests that were identified. So, for pest 2, here other measures will apply. So, here RO3, RO4 and RO5 are effective for pest 2. And in this example, EFSA has rated the likelihood of pest freedom as extremely likely. Okay, then EFSA will do that for all the actionable pests which were identified. And this is an example, so how it could look like. So here we have evaluated 6 pests. And for pest 3, the likelihood of pest freedom was rated by the EFSA working group as likely, whereas in the other species it was almost certain or extremely likely. So this is the end conclusion of the opinion of the commodity risk assessment that EFSA will make. And this is the table basically that the risk manager, in this case the European Commission, will use to make a decision on the commodity. And so maybe they could decide that for pest 3 maybe more additional measures may be required. And then the risk manager will then set what kind of additional measures will be necessary to achieve pest freedom. So now I give the floor back to Giro, because we are...
Thank you, Roel, for the conclusion. Excellent presentation on this aspect that are extremely important for us. So we are close to the conclusion of this webinar, at least for the conclusion of the presentation, then we will have time for the question and answer. One important aspect is related to the request for confidentiality. In case in the preparation of the dossier, there are some information, some data that you consider that are confidential, should be treated as confidential, you should indicate this using the Annex B of the technical report that specify the how you have to give this instruction to us. Just to conclude, some take-home messages. It should be clear that at this point that the dossier is the starting point for the commodity risk assessment, and of course it should contain all the information and the relevant evidences that are requested in the technical report, and all this information should be clear and unambiguous. We already mentioned that the commodity risk assessment will be published by EFSA, so will be made publicly available. And the result of the commodity risk assessment is the starting point, will enable the European Commission to take a final decision on the request of export iris plant into the European Union territory, as it is defined by Article 42 of the Regulation 2031 of 2016. Here, but also in the implementing regulation, you have the instruction on how the submission of dossier should be done. So this is the email address, and essentially all the formats can be accepted. And before concluding, I would like to express a special thanks to all the people, because apart of the speaker, several other persons are working for this webinar. So we have Svetla Kozelska, Maria Rosaria Mannino, and Maria Chiara Rosace in the question and answer section behind the scenes. Then we have all the support of the technical and logistic, also preparing and managing this webinar. So Francesco Moretti, Brunilda Ciulai, Andrea Magni, Marella Tassini, Felix Badea, and Francesca Lotito. And in addition to these people, of course, the hierarchy of our unit and our team, Nicolaus Chris, Giuseppe Stancanelli, and all the EFSA plant health team and the Corsair unit for the support they provided. Then before you leave, we first of all thank you for attending this webinar from all over the world. As Roel said, I was checking, browsing into the country, and there are, of course, beautiful country that are attending. All of them I would like to visit. And you can, if you have further question, you can send the question to this functional mailbox that is alpha@efsa.europa.eu. And we would thank you also if you will take these 5 minutes to fill out the evaluation form that you can get using this hyperlink. So thank you now, sorry, I forgot that the most important thing that is part of the webinar is open the question and answer section of this webinar. Probably you have already started to provide some question, and okay, we can start to answer. So I see one. You see this interesting
Yes.
question from Dana. From Dana, the question is: if a particular pest has already undergone a pest risk assessment by EFSA or EPO, should we still provide all the information listed in section 4.4? So thank you, Dana, for your question. Would you answer this question, Roel?
Yes, I think if a PRA is already available, then I think it's very easy to find all the information that we need for a commodity risk assessment. So then you just transfer all the information in the pest risk assessment which is available to the commodity risk assessment, and then it will be used in the evaluation. So I think it will speed up the process if for a particular pest a lot of information is already available.
Yes, exactly. This will be a situation that we will really envisage to have, but probably it's not will be not the same for all the pests. However, then we have another interesting question from Munir, and the question is if the dossier should include products that third country are already exporting into the EU, and for which EU the phytosanitary certificate is requested, like citrus and tomato. I think you all have more experience on this than me, and
yes, I think as already explained by the Commission, so in the EU regulation 2018 and 2019, you can see the list of products that are regarded as high risk. And in this list there is only one fruit genus, which is Momordica, and this means that all the other fruits and vegetables are not considered high risk, so you do not have to
follow this procedure.
Yeah, to submit a dossier for those, but of course they have to follow the regulations that are already in place.
Yes.
For those products.
Exactly. So essentially, this measure of high-risk plant apply only for the genus and species that are listed and that are published with the implementing regulation. So this is very correct. So I think we have still some time, and we have other question as well. We have a question from Anna that asks, what kind of dossier should we submit to export Momordica to the EU territory? So I think we have a good agreement. I read the question and you provide the answer.
And maybe we can go to the slide of the Momordica where it is explained.
Okay. Yes, we are. Okay.
This one?
Yes.
So for the Momordica, it means that you have to submit a dossier if Trips palmi is known to be present in your country. So suppose that Trips palmi is not present in your country and you can officially declare that it's not present in the country, then you do not have to submit it. Then Momordica is not regarded as a high-risk commodity. And in case Trips palmi is present in your country and you want to export Momordica, then you have to show which phytosanitary mitigation measures are in place to eradicate Trips palmi from Momordica that is exported to the European Union. So in that case, EFSA will evaluate all the measures that are taken against Trips palmi in your country.
I think this is very interesting, also because I was checking some information on Momordica, and I saw that the consumption of Momordica in Europe, even if it's not a traditional product, is increasing. So probably also because as a specific property, nutraceutic property, so probably in the next year is going to further increase, and this can be interesting. So we have one attendee that is very active, because we have a second question from Dana. And the second question from Dana is what would be the final deadline for submission of dossier? This is interesting, but I think that we have no final deadline so far.
No, I also don't think so. I think you can always submit the dossier.
Exactly. There is there is no, I would say, there is no rush. No, there is no deadline, but of course it depends of the entering in force of this ban, and when you needed to consider that if at the entering in force of the ban the dossier is not provided, the export into the EU will be blocked. So these are, I think, are the only constraint that we have.
Yeah. But once you submit your dossier and it will be evaluated, then yes, a decision will be made.
Exactly. We have no time window because it's always open, so you can always submit the dossier.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me see if we have other questions. Probably we have yes, we have a question from Joshua. Joshua is asking if the plants for planting are exported as a different commodity, like unrooted or rooted cuttings, if is needed to submit separate dossier for each type of, let's say, plant for planting, but belonging to the same species.
Yes, so I think that's a very good question, Joshua. So it's very important that you specify what is the commodity type that is exported to the European Union. And if more commodity types are exported for the same plant species, then you should explain that in the dossier. And also you should explain that if there are differences in the pests that are associated with the different commodity types, yes, then that is very important then to express that in the dossier. So you could do it in one dossier, but you really have to explain it for each commodity type. What are the pests associated with that particular commodity type, and maybe there are different measures for the different commodity types, and you also have to explain that then in your dossier.
Exactly. So okay, we have another question from Anurag. Anurag is asking if a group of neighboring country can submit a joint dossier. This way is yes, something that is I think is really important to outline. That okay, it's not possible to present a joint dossier from different country, because the dossier should be submitted by the National Plant Protection Organization, so should be country-based, the dossier. But of course, this is not preventing if there are occasion of collaboration between neighboring country, collaboration of putting together the information related to pests or related to the pest list. This I would say that is even welcome if there could be collaboration between neighboring countries. But from our side, we cannot accept a dossier from more than one country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's check if we have other question. It seems not anymore. I think we have still some minutes for further questions. So I think we invite you, if you have doubt, to submit question. And it was impressive. This also this the attendance from so many different countries. This is a good sign that there is interest in.
Yes.
And I discover also type of export that I was not aware of. But you think this will be engage EFSA and the working group quite a lot?
Yes, probably.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so if I think that we can, because we also are running out of time, and we can close the question and answer session, but you on your side, you still have time for submitting question using the application that you have. So even if we are not broadcasted, we will stop the broadcast now, but you can continue to submit question, and we will provide a written answer to the question that you can submit. Also for other 5-10 minutes, you can continue to submit questions. So we thank you, all of you. I already thank you, the speaker and the other contributors, but especially thank to you for your participation and for your question. Bye.
Bye.